But I'd like for all of us to welcome Celeste, and we thank you for being our speaker. I didn't think that I was going to make it. I got off my tractor and got here and didn't know that I was going to chair the meeting, but so happy that I'm able to chair and to introduce you. Thank you for coming and being our speaker.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Celeste. I have always loved that name. Thank you.
You know, there are people that have been sober. Sandra, I call her Sandra all the time, so I have this problem. But thank you.
That's okay. I like the name Celeste. It's like a little, it sounds like a wilder version of me. No, really. And I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Elise W, and I'm an alcoholic. See what I mean? Elise sounds like reserved and, proper. Celeste, no, that sounds more what my inner being is. Well, anyway, I am alcoholic, and God gave me a beautiful gift on March 28th of 1998 and blessed me sober, and I've been sober since then. So 25 years. I think I'm 2 months more sober. That doesn't sound right. 2 months. Danny and I got sober in the same year. Yeah, so we're both celebrating 25 years of sobriety. Now, don't get all, don't romanticize all, that. Our big book tells us that alcoholism centers mostly in our minds. So take the alcohol out, I've still got some insanity going on, and to varying degrees. So I have to deal with alcoholism every day. It's not like a done deal, at all. And I will just give you one example of an insane thought I had this morning, 2 minutes after I woke up. My eyes weren't even open yet. And I noticed I had a headache. And this was my insane thought. Oh, I can't speak tonight. I have a headache. I'm going to have to call somebody. First thing, I'm going to have to find somebody else. That's insane. Okay, that's the kind of insane stuff I do, because I don't really like telling my story. That's not really my thing. And boy, I was going to see if I could, weasel out of it. And then I started thanking God for, that reading today talked about thanking God. That's how I start my day. And then I heard loud and clear, you're going to speak tonight. That's a headache. I don't have a headache now. I just did at 7:02 a.m. Anyway, I have a sponsor, and I have a home group. My home group is the Primary Purpose Group in Spartanburg. I also, just as a disclaimer, am a long-term member of Al-Anon family groups. I started when I was like 24 or something, and I'm 68 now. So I've got a lot of years in Al-Anon, and the reason I have that is I was married to an alcoholic who I loved very, very much, and he died of this illness, and I pretty much was watching him die, and I, at a very young age, entered Al-Anon, which is where I discovered that I was alcoholic. So thanks to Al-Anon, I found out what a big problem I had. So I also have an Al-Anon home group. It's in Greenville. It's called Serenity Group. So I have an Al-Anon sponsor too. I'm also a drug addict. Those are just some disclaimers I'll put out there. I started my recovery in NA, but I probably won't say that when I say that for a sponsor. I switched to AA shortly after my sobriety date. So what I'd like to do is share with you a little bit about what I was like, what happened to me, and what I'm like now. And I tell you what, I think in order for you to really know how I'm like now, I can't really share that. It's hard for me to really see who I am now. You're just going to have to hang out with me, and then you're going to find out how I am now. I am pretty clear about, what I was like and what happened to me, although there's a big mystery about, there's still God involved in getting sober, and there's a lot of mystery in that. So I'll see what I can do to share with you how that happened. The other thing that I like to share when I'm telling my story is how I developed a relationship with God. Like, I think the personal stories are basically about that in the back of the book, so I like to share that. Now, that's my plan. That's the only plan I have. I don't know if that's what's going to, happen tonight, because God will speak to me. I will tell you this, that I tried atheism when I was a kid, and it just didn't fit for me. And my two top favorite lines in the big book are all about God. The first one is, God does not make too hard terms on those who seek Him. That's my number one favorite line in the big book. My second favorite line is one you maybe haven't heard spoken so much. It is, his sanity returned and he thanked God. So those are my top two. I have a few others, but those are the top two. So that kind of gives you an idea of my relationship with God, just in case I don't talk about it again. Okay, so I guess I'll start with when I was a little girl. I was born into a fantastic family. Firstborn, first grandchild, got a lot of attention. Nobody drank. Nobody. Not mom, not dad. Nobody. Nobody in that little. My two younger sisters that came along later, oh, they drink some, but they're not alcoholic. I happen to be the only alcoholic in that little unit, family unit. And I don't remember too much about early childhood, except that I enjoyed all that attention, being the first, and then 17 months later, another baby came along, and then 4 years, or less than 3 years later, another one came along, and I was just not the center of attention anymore. And the only thing I kind of remember about that time, when I was really little, was wanting to be good. Maybe if I'm really, really good, I'll get attention. And that worked for a little while, until I was around 10, and I thought, it's not in my nature to be good. Really, I'm more of a Celeste. It's just not in my nature. I mean, I started stealing. The first time I remember stealing something, I was 5 years old. I lied all the time. I was sneaky. I also wanted to be by myself. Like, we moved around a lot. I lived in Ohio. I lived in Ohio, born up there. And we moved a lot because Dad was in college, and he would go back and forth to work at his father's pharmacy and then back to college, and we moved around a lot. And I don't know where I was when I started that part. That's another thing that happens to me a lot. I've got a lot of brain damage, and I just lose where I am. So I don't know where I was going with that. So I think I'm still in really early childhood. We moved around a lot. So I was constantly the new kid in school once I got to school. Constantly the new kid. Sometimes mid-year, the new kid. Always very, very self-conscious. And it wasn't until maybe about age 8 that I started noticing that I was really tight right in the middle of me, right here. I was just like wrenched. And it would get tighter and tighter as I went along. And I remember I was in first grade, and Mrs. Smith, I think her name was the teacher. And Mrs. Smith was huge. She was huge. She could fit 4 of us in her lap. And I was in her lap a lot because I'd raise my hand. I said, Miss Smith, and I'd wring I just wring my hands, and I'd say, I'm nervous. I'm so nervous. She said, come on up here. And I would just fall into all that fat, just, And it was around that time that adults started asking me, what's wrong with you, Elise? What's wrong with you, Elise? And I had no clue. I know now what was wrong with me, and I needed a drink, and I needed it bad. However, I didn't know what was wrong with me. And so many adults were asking me that I was starting to ask myself, what is wrong with me? Something's really, really wrong with me. because there was nothing external to be afraid about, or nervous about, but I just was constantly afraid, terrified. I also have early memories of doing daredevil things, like my uncle had a horse that charged you, chased you down and bit you and tried to stomp you. And I would run across the field hoping he wouldn't see me before I got to the other side. And I got bit sometimes, never got trampled, but I would do things like that, not so anybody could see me, it was in secret. I was also a storm chaser on my bike, 5 years old, going all the way to a storm until the hairs would, from the electricity would raise, and then I'd try to outrun the storm. I was doing that in secret too, and obviously I was trying to prove something to myself. You know how Bill Wilson was trying to prove to the world, stuff. Well, I was trying to prove to not only the world, but to me that I wasn't afraid of nothing. So I was starting some very dangerous behavior at a very young age, which would get even more dangerous as I got into alcohol. So, a miracle, one of the miracles that happened for me, I was about 10 years old, and Mom and Dad were kind of poor. We just rented places, and we kind of settled down in this one little town, Marietta College, or Marietta, Ohio. Dad was a college professor there, and it was his first big job as a college professor. And he was wanting to buy a house. They wanted to buy a house. They found a house where they're still living now. Dad is 94, Mom's 92. They're still living in that house. And this house was really cheap, and one of the reasons it was cheap was because it was going to be sold as is. And the reason it was as is was the guy who was selling it had lost his wife, and he was so heartbroken, he just took his toiletries and he took his clothing and he left. And sold that house as is. So it was completely furnished. Her clothes were all there. The woman's clothes. There was medicine in the medicine cabinet. There was food in the refrigerator, and there was a liquor cabinet. Right down there, about real low to the ground next to the fridge. And I think for the first year, we girls and Mom would go through all the drawers and see what we could find. We found $2,000 stashed in behind something in the medicine cabinet. There was treasures everywhere. But I'll tell you what, the treasure that was in that cabinet by the fridge, that was the biggest treasure. And this is my personal belief about myself, that I was born alcoholic, because I sat on that kitchen floor for months on and off, getting those bottles out and putting them up against the light so that I could see all that's shining. And one of them said, "Southern Comfort." And I intuitively knew there was magic in those bottles, and I intuitively knew there was something great about the South, by the way. But I think I made a decision when I was 10 or 11 years old that I was going to live in the South one day. So anyway, there were 3 bottles in there, and that was the one that intrigued me the most. Now, I didn't drink it right away. I obsessed about it for months. Hallmark symptom of alcoholism, obsessing. This was before my first drink. I was obsessing. And then when I did take that first drink, I told you I had that wrenched. It was just like somebody was squeezing my insides right there. It was so tight. That first drink, once it got down far enough, there was this, that loosened up a little bit. And the second drink, it loosened up more. With each drink, it loosened up more. And what a relief. I've been living with that for years. And so I was just in heaven. I was just in absolute heaven. Of course, I'm just a little kid, so I got to hide it. And I managed to do that. Mom was busy. Dad was really busy. And I never got caught drinking all that liquor, one by one. That was all gone. Well, when that was all gone, wanting more, that's the other sign of alcoholism, right? After the first drink, you want more and more and more. Well, that's why I think I was alcoholic from the get-go and I didn't cross any line or whatever. If I did, it was long before the first drink. So that's just my opinion, based on my experience. So it ran out eventually, and here I am, 12, 13 years old, so what am I going to do? I got to have more. What am I going to do? And again, I knew that there was other stuff besides alcohol, that there was stuff out on the streets. How did I know that? How did I know that? I guess only a drug addict from birth knows that. So I would save up my lunch money, I would save up my allowance, save up my birthday money, and I literally was out on the streets as a little kid buying stuff. Of course I got ripped off a lot. And I also would go to my friends who I knew had older brothers and sisters, and back then, this was the 70s, and maybe it was the late 60s, I don't know. People weren't as afraid to, do that for kids. But still, there was this, like one guy would do it a couple times, and he said, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. And so anyway, I would get some beer, mostly beer, and also pills, and also weed. I would buy that out there. And I had that younger sister that was 17 months younger than I was. She was deeply disturbed by this. I wasn't able to hide it from her. And eventually she would tell my parents, and I don't know how old I was when they first found out that I had stuff. And she needs Al-Anon, because she was flushing my stuff down the toilet and pouring stuff down the drain when I was a kid, and she was a kid. Anyway, so what is next? I'll skip to middle school, and by then I'm drinking and drugging so much that I have very little memory of middle school. I do remember there was a tunnel. It was part of the Underground Railroad, and those kids like me who were drinking and using would go down there and spend a lot of time down there in the tunnel, getting drunk and high. And I don't remember any adults, in middle school ever approaching me about anything in my behavior. Sorry, I'm coughing too much. I'm a long COVID patient and I still cough a lot. It pretty much sucks. It'd probably be better if I had a microphone. Maybe I'll pretend. Maybe that'll help. So by the time I hit high school, I was hanging out with older guys mostly, who didn't mind buying me beer and who had lots of drugs. And I was hanging out with them a lot. I was sort of in school. I mean, I would show up I would ride the bus to school, but I'd be either under the building or over the hill with my drugs and all. And I found somebody in the school who was selling, and I didn't drink in school. Just didn't do that, but a lot of other stuff in high school. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, right. Oh my gosh, so God wants to tell me to tell this, and I did not expect this. Okay, I had a big secret. Other than, I was out on the street and drinking underage and all of that. My secret was that I saw things that other people didn't see, and I heard things that other people didn't hear. And I started, okay, now I understand why God wants me to tell this. this is when I started hating God, because I asked God to remove all that. Once I discovered that other people don't see things like that, and people don't hear things like that. It turns out now I'm psychic. I've always been psychic. I'm okay with that now, but I was not okay with that for most of my life, especially when I was a kid. So I started begging God to take it away, and God never did. So after a while, of course, I started hating God. And the more I drank, I thought, and drugged, the more I thought that would squish that down, but it didn't. And then it turned into having premonitions of world events, and then they would happen. And it didn't matter how wasted I was, they would just still come, and they would still come, and they would still come. So my solution was, okay, I'm just going to kill myself. Drinking isn't touching this, staying wasted isn't getting rid of this. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be this freaky weirdo. I don't want to be a freak. And so I thought about killing myself. And I don't know if that was the first time. I think I've had about 5 episodes where I've thought about killing myself. And I do believe that I chose to be here on earth at this time for a lot of good reasons, whatever those are. And there have been times in my life where I've wanted to say, forget it, I'm out of this commitment. I'm sorry I ever made this commitment, and let me out. Another reason I hated God was that I had a drunk grandpa. That was my mother's dad. And he lived in Colorado. And Mom moved to Ohio when she got married. I didn't see him much. But his drinking got so bad that she decided she was going to disown him, which meant I, as a kid, wasn't going to be able to see my grandpa ever again. And I blame God for that too. So I had these things I was hating God for. And so I wasn't real great with God at all. And as soon as I could leave home, I did. And I moved in with, I moved into the dope house basically at age 18. And Charlie would go out and do his work on the streets, and he would come home with a bottle and a handful of pills for me. And I lived there for a while until I went to college. See, I thought I had to go to college because my dad was a professor, which isn't really true because my youngest sister decided she's not going to college. And I was like, what? I really thought I had to. But it was a good thing because I really needed to. I wanted to be away from parental, control. That's why I kind of ran away to the dope house, was to get out from parental scrutiny. And I don't have much memory really of college, except that one quarter, we were in the quarter system, so we had to take finals every quarter, and I just was on a binge and missed finals. Didn't realize it till a week later. And I didn't go to a college, I didn't pick a college that would care about that kind of thing much. In fact, there was a bootleg soaper factory there, and that's really why I picked that college. You may not know what soapers are. Some of you might not. Later on we call them Quaaludes. I don't know what they're called now. That stuff.
Disco biscuits.
Is that what they call them now?
Gorilla biscuits.
Oh my God. Oh my
Fanny
God.
crumbs.
Okay.
I have to do a copy.
So I didn't do very well in college. However, I met the guy, that man I married. I was telling you, I guess, about that. Met him, actually he was from my hometown, so it's not like I met him, but we got together. And he was I was into minor stealing. I did a lot of shoplifting while I was in college, so I'd have money to buy the stuff out, my alcohol and drugs. And he was into a lot of stealing, so I was helping him with all that. All that stealing. I used to say, well, I live with criminals. Well, I'm a criminal. I'm more of a Celeste than an Elise. And we got in a lot of trouble. while I was in college. And it was during that time when I was in college that I was noticing how sick I was getting with drinking. And I wasn't so sick with the pills, so I thought, okay, I'm just going to quit drinking. Well, I could not quit. I tried and I tried, I could not quit alcohol. And so I've pretty much, almost my whole drinking career, been a combination of pills and barbiturates and alcohol. That's pretty much the way it was, since I was 12 years old. And I really hated alcohol in the end. I hated it. I hated what it did to me physically. So anyway, so he got arrested, the husband. Well, we weren't married yet, but we were going to get married. And he got arrested for the thievery we were doing, and it was diamonds. He loved stealing diamonds. I was holding the diamonds. And he didn't tell, the authorities that I was involved. In fact, I guess he told them I didn't even know about it, which is sort of true. I never asked him where he got it. I just like scratching them on the mirror just to see if they were real, and all that. Anyway, so he got arrested for another crime, not the diamonds. And then while he was serving 10 to 12 in prison, and one day there was a knock on the door, and he was there between two plainclothesmen, and they wanted the diamonds. And this is how I'm still insane. When I think back on that, I think, why didn't I keep the biggest, best diamond? Why did I not do that? Why didn't I hold one back? I didn't. I gave it all. So anyway, we did get married after that, and that's where I was slowly watching him progress in his alcoholism and drug addiction. And he was so far ahead of me, I guess, in the progression that I thought I was fine. I really thought I was fine. By the way, the career I chose was speech language pathology, and I got a job in Greenville, South Carolina, as a speech therapist in the public schools. He and I were still doing a lot of illegal stuff. And he served 15 months or something like that, and then of course he had a parole officer. And he got in trouble again. This time it wasn't for fever, it was for something else, which I wasn't involved in for once. And his parole officer said, well, you know what this means, and you're going to have to serve 10 to 12. You've been arrested again. And the parole officer gave us the idea to flee. He said, for one thing, I guess I kind of looked like an Elise too. He said, you two are so sweet and you're newly married. He said, I hate to see you start your marriage out with 10 to 12 years, of the husband being in prison. He said, tell you what I'm going to do. I'll come back in 2 weeks like I always do. And if you're not here, I'm just going to go to the judge and say, he skipped town. We don't need to chase him. Why don't we just drop the charges? So that's how I got here to South Carolina, how we got here. In the career I was in, there was jobs in the schools. And that was the first job I had in Greenville County. I almost got fired from that because of the drunken incident in the Steak and Ale, which isn't there anymore, on 291 in the parking lot. Superintendent calls me in and my two drinking buddies in, who are also speech therapists, and gave us warnings. And that's when I decided, well, I'm going to drink at home now. I'm not going to go out to bars. I'm going to drink at home. So I'm going to skip a little bit to what I call the end times, when I'll just briefly say I had this moment of clarity before I left that husband, where I just started crying for days. I didn't know what was wrong, I just started crying. And I had one drinking buddy, other than the husband, one drinking buddy, and I called her, her name is Linda. And it's weird, this is the 80s, so, the telephone cord is like, we got a really long one. And I took the cord took the phone underneath the kitchen table I don't know why I went there, but I was under the table, and I called her, and I told her, I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And I literally didn't know what this meant. And I was tired of living with a dope dealer. I knew that. I was tired of being afraid all the time that, I was going to lose my career, that kind of thing. But I think there was a deeper thing going on that I needed to get sober. I needed something different. I was tired. And I was only in my 20s, and I was tired. So I didn't leave right away. And when I did, that's when I started noticing that my drinking was like not good. And why am I still on the streets buying pills? I started to realize that I was in trouble. And I'm going to tell you about the end times now. That's what I like to call it. It was winter of 90, it was the holidays of 97, 98. And I had driven up to Ohio to see my family. And I started crying for 5 days, night and day, night and day. They're asking me, what's wrong with you, Elise? What's wrong with you, Elise? I don't know. And I still don't know I'm an alcoholic. I really don't. I was concerned, but I didn't know I was alcoholic. And on the 6th day, I told them I just got to get back to South Carolina. So I'm driving down I-77, somewhere in Virginia. And I have to keep pulling over because I'm crying so bad and I'm shaking. And the shakes had started earlier, and I didn't even know it was from alcoholism. I was really dumb. It was a dumb Elise. I wasn't much of a Celeste. I really am not. I did not know I was shaking all the time. So I'm shaking, I'm crying, and I pull over this one last time, and I yell out to God. I said, what is wrong with me? And within seconds, this peace came over me. I stopped crying, and there was just this utter peace like I had really never known before. And I heard a voice that said, Elise, you are an untreated alcoholic, and if you don't get help soon, you're going to die. And there was something okay with me about that. At first, the first thought was, oh, so that's what's wrong with me. And I've been wondering all my life, what's wrong with me? Oh, I'm an alcoholic. Well, that was on January 4th of 1998. I didn't go to a meeting until January 11th. That's how much resistance I had. Even though I was dying inside and was told by God, no less, that if I don't get help soon, I was going to die, I still resisted. So I went to that first meeting. I'd been going to open AA meetings, because that's what you do in Al-Anon, to learn about the illness of alcoholism. So I picked up a white chip on January 11th, 1998. I have some memory of January. I have no memory of February, because I was out. I have no memory of March until around the 27th or the 28th of March of 1998, when I came to in the hospital. And I thought I was going to die, and I remembered that voice that said, and I thought, well, maybe this is it, maybe I'm going to die. And I remember having this thought, now I don't believe this now, but I believed it then, was that, well, if I die in this state of intoxication, then my soul is going to be lost forever. I don't think that's true. I don't think our souls can be lost. But that was the thing that started me saying to God, okay, I'm gonna get a sponsor, because I haven't at that point. I'm gonna work, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. And the other thing I said to God was, which I promptly forgot, was, and I will work for you every day for the rest of my life. This is what I was telling God as I thought I was dying. I did not remember I had made that last pledge, and I haven't had a drink since. And I did get a sponsor, and I have been working my butt off ever since. And I did not remember that I had told God, I will work for you for the rest of my life, or every day for the rest of my life, if I survive this. And it wasn't until I was maybe around 7 years sober and I was at a podium telling my story, and I got to this point where I came to in the hospital and I made that, I'm going to start working AA. And I remembered that. I had that other pledge. And so a whole bunch of people that were hearing me saw me almost faint. And because I was like, oh my God, I told God I would work every day for God for the rest of my life. And I was like, it's been 7 years, I haven't been doing that. And so everybody that was there heard me say all this out loud. And then before my talk was over, I realized, where else can I work for God every single day of my life outside of AA? I mean, and I have been doing that. I've been trying my best to work for God from that day. So I calmed down a little bit, like, okay, I'm still good. I'm still good with God. So what I did to get a sponsor this was my strategy for getting a sponsor. I was discharged from the hospital March 28, 1998. And I went to a meeting and I got there super early, like before I knew the coffee makers would be there. And it was cold on that March 28th. It was freezing. So I was out in the parking lot. And my strategy was the first woman that comes up to me and says, hey, I'm so-and-so, who are you? I would ask her to sponsor me. So this very young woman comes up to me, hey, I'm Lisa, who are you? I've never met you before. And I said, my name's Elise / Celeste. And I'm dying and I need a sponsor. Will you sponsor me? And her eyes got real big and she says, well, I only got 18 months. And I said, I don't even have today yet. And I said, I've got to get help. And she said, well, wait a minute. She said, my sponsor just pulled up. So she went over to the car, and it was just way too long for me, so I was waiting for the next woman to come, and I was going to ask her. And as it turned out, Lisa came back and said, well, you'll be my first sponsee, and my sponsor says that it'd be really good for me, so I'm going to do it. So anyway, I had a really rocky first few years in sobriety. I did not seek help from withdrawing, and if anybody here is withdrawn from alcohol and pills, it's horrible. It's a horrible withdrawal detox, and I was too prideful to let my doctor know, let the superintendent of Greenville County Schools know, my family know. So I suffered through that. I took some sick leave, and I was in the rooms. I was the one shaking with the coffee and not being able to eat, gagging, with hardly swallowing my own spit. I was very, very sick for the first 30 days and even longer. And I was terrified. I was so scared. And although that sponsor was taking me to a treatment center, a couple times a week, and I was seeing people that were half dead like I was, but I had maybe 10 days sober and they had 0, She was taking me to do all this service. I didn't know it was service at the time. And I was doing everything she told me to do, everything. So we started, working the steps and all that. I still did not understand that working the steps will keep me sober, doing service work will keep me, doing what my sponsor says. I thought that was true. So I thought it all depended on me, which meant I didn't really get step 1. I am powerless over alcohol. I cannot keep myself sober. And that took me a good 3 years for it to finally dawn on me. Wait a minute. God's keeping me sober. Not all the steps I'm working, not all the service I'm doing, not all the meetings I'm going to, God is keeping me sober. And I finally started relaxing a little. But those first 3 years, there was no pink cloud for me. None of that. And I was just nervous and terrified and sick sick on and off. It took, I guess, that was 25 or 30 years of pumping chemicals in, and I literally had some detox even a year later, like little periods of detoxing. It was quite awful. So it was rocky. And I've had, after I got past that, the first 3 years, I've really had a pretty good time in AA. And I've done some service for AA at the group level, at the district level, at the area level. Right now, my jobs are to still be on the helpline once a week. I call Yvonne when there's somebody from Gaffney that needs a meeting. I'm on the helpline once a week. I'm on a planning committee for a women's meeting that just started in Spartanburg. I'm on the finance committee for Area 62. There's something else. I'm planning, helping to plan an event for our primary purpose group. I'm on a committee for that, a little anniversary. So I've almost always had some kind of service to do. I prefer the service that's behind the scenes. That's kind of what I like, and that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. I have had some service positions where, like, area chairperson was the most visible. Area 62 chairperson is the person who facilitates area assemblies. So this is the entire state of South Carolina, and so I would be up at a podium with 200, give or take, depending on if it was hurricane season or not, alcoholics, the GSRs, the committee chair people, and all that. And so I've had these visible jobs in AA, and I mean, I kind of struggled through it because I really don't like to be that visible. Because I'm more of an Elise, I'm not really a Celeste. I'm rather introverted. I'm an introvert who loves people, basically. And I really, that has flipped for me. I mean, I used to hate people, really did. I hated people. And now I love people. So it's coming up on top of the hour, and I don't know if there's anything else I need to say. I'm starting to do the crap I do to my head, like, I lost it in the middle, and nothing made sense, and self-centered. I'm going to ask God if there's anything else I need to say. God says just to say thank you.